For Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to rise in the House, and today, especially on this Opposition Day motion that talks about how the first carbon tax is going to increase the price of gas 41 cents a litre. The second clean fuel standard will add 20 cents more to that when sales tax is included, and it just will further exacerbate the cost of living issues that people are facing across the country. And so what I wanted to do today in my speech is talk about what the carbon tax will do, talk about what it won't do, and then talk about what real solutions should be offered. And so first of all, what does it actually do? Well, it actually increases the price of things. And it's not just the price of gasoline that's going up, because it's an escalator. So for example, if we look at food, that has increased in prices on the average 12%, but some items of food, are up 30 and 40%. When you're talking about a farmer that's producing the food, they are going to have to use more diesel and fuel to heat their barns, to take care of their growing their products and drying them. There's a carbon tax on that, and to make it worse, there's a tax on the tax, right? So they're applying tax on top of that. So it's a substantial amount of money. We're talking about $150,000 for a farmer. That's a real thing that they obviously have to pass on to the consumer. Well, then you're shipping the product to a processing facility, and there's a carbon tax on that and a tax on the tax. And then you're at the processing facility, and depending on the type of processing facility, they've got a carbon tax on their emissions. And then you're talking about shipping it to the grocery store. Now, again, that's another carbon tax and a tax on the tax. And then you get to the grocery store, and now you got to put it in refrigerators, and if the Liberals don't buy them for you, then, that's another expense. And you're spending more energy trying to keep the products preserved. And so what's happening is it's hurting individuals. If you think about before the pandemic, the data that was reported is that half of Canadians were within $200 of not being able to pay their bills. Half of Canadians, okay? Think about that. And then fast forward to where we are now, where we've added a second carbon tax that is estimated, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, to cost each individual $538 a year. Half of Canadians were within $200 of not being able to pay their bills every month. Now you've added $600 more to them. That's on top of the estimated cost of the already existing carbon tax, which the Parliamentary Budget Officer says, depending on the province you live in, is between $1,500 and $3,000 a person. So by the time all these taxes and carbon taxes and tax on the tax get to an individual, you're talking about $4,000 per Canadian. That is a substantial amount of money, and if you break that down by months, you're talking about $300 a month, which puts people way over the 50% that couldn't pay their bills if they had an increase of $200. Well, the Liberals are going to say, well, you get back more than we take. But we know that that is not true. I've seen my climate action rebate check come to me, $128.55 4 times a year. Add that up, it's nowhere near $4,000. So it is absolutely a misrepresentation of the facts that the government is somehow giving Canadians more back. No, they are not. And what's happening is I'm getting calls at my office continually from individuals who are saying, well, I can't afford to pay my bills. I'm losing my house. I have a lot of seniors in my riding. Some of them are having to go back to work at 74 years of age in order to afford heating, the gasoline, groceries, the whole thing. So, that is what the carbon tax is doing, and it's adding to the already inflationary pressures that we have from the out-of-control spending that's happening on the other side. So, that's what the carbon tax does. Let's talk a little bit about what it doesn't do. It does not reduce emissions. It is a tax plan. It is not an emissions plan. If we look to who has actually met their Paris targets, our neighbors to the south met their Paris targets, and they did it through emissions reduction technology and switching to fuels like nuclear, LNG, lower carbon fuels, these kinds of actual concrete solutions. They put capital incentives in place so that businesses would put the emissions reduction technology in place. That's how they did it, and they did it in 4 years. If we look at where we're at, we were supposed to reduce our targets by 30% from the 2005 level. The 2005 level was 732 megatons. We're now at 670 megatons. So in 20 years, we've reduced 60 megatons. But the target that we have to get to is a 538 reduction. So we're nowhere near the plan. And the approach that the Liberals have got, I mean, they talk about tree planting. Well, they're going to plant 2 billion trees. Do you know how many trees we already have in Canada, Madam Speaker? We have 318 billion trees already in Canada. So 2 billion more, well, okay, you know, more trees is always better. But the reality is, the recent report said the Liberals have planted less than 2% of these in years. And it's because the program that was introduced doesn't work. I've got a great group of Climate Action Sarnia, and they want to plant trees. And so I approached the minister and I said, hey, look, we got lots of volunteers. They're willing to come out. They've got all the tools. We just need the money to go get the trees and get them in the ground. And you know what? You got to plant 10,000 trees or you can't get any money. Like, you got to start somewhere with a program that works a little bit better than that. And so, you know, that is what the carbon tax doesn't do anyway. Now, I hear a lot of discussion today in the debate about, well, what about the wildfires? And what about the floods? And I grant you, we are seeing severe weather events, and we're seeing them at a frequency that we haven't seen before. But Canada is less than 2% of the carbon footprint of the world. We could eliminate the whole thing, and you're still going to get all those wildfires, and you're still going to get all those floods, because you've got countries like China and India that are building coal plants. China is 34% of the footprint. You know what would be better? If we took Canadian LNG and exported it. Okay? We could reduce the global footprint by over 10%.
Absolutely.
That would be 5 times our existing footprint that we could reduce. That is real climate action, Madam Speaker. But instead, the 12 LNG projects have been shut down by this Liberal government.
Shame on them.
The Germans approached us. Germany, who decided to go down the green energy path, and then they found out it was so expensive that they got rid of it and went back onto coal and LNG and approached us to get a contract with us for $58 billion, which we refused. Australia used to have a carbon tax. They got rid of it. It made everything more expensive, and it didn't help them meet their goals. Then you've got the situation with countries that are in need of our fuel. We are the most environmentally responsible producers of LNG in the world.
Yes.
But we can't get anything built because they got a C-69 project approval thing that got put in place. And we've seen the disaster that the government is making with the Trans Mountain project that was supposed to be $7 billion. It's at $30 billion. It's not even built yet. So, you know, the carbon tax hurts Canadians. It inflates their costs. People can't afford to live. They're struggling. I know these Liberal MPs are hearing this from their constituents, and they need to listen. What we need to do is actual emissions reduction technology, get on lower carbon fuels, export it to the world, and work together to get a better planet. That's what we need to do, Madam Speaker, and that's the vision over on this side of the house.